We're sitting with Philippe Rahm, who's visiting with us for the Waltz Symposium this weekend. And thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to sit down with us and answer a few questions that we've compiled that I think we're all curious about and go a little more in depth about your work. And so I'll just start us off. A lot of the issues you deal with on many scales deal with phenomena that are both visible and invisible, unseen forces that have a larger effect on both space and the human condition, which is embodied.
So thank you. uh, the First of all, I have to say that these phenomena for me are at the core of architecture, because we have always to think why we need architecture. Is because you know, the first reason is because there is some rain and you want to be protected from the rain, or it's too cold outside, so you create a pocket of air where you could eat inside, and or you protect from the sun. So this is because it's come from the human body. The human body could resist at certain temperature, you know, and when it's become too warm or too cold, you need to do something. So there is a first kind of body physiological response to that, with what we call a thermogenesis or thermolysis, like you start to shiver, or you start to sweat, or the blood veins start to enlarge or to close inside to evacuate heat or things like that. And when it's not enough, you start to have clothes on you, or to remove clothes. And when it's not enough, you start to build an envelope to be protected from the wind or things like that. So I think the phenomena you are talking about is climatic phenomena, and this is the reason why we need architecture. It's to create local climatic phenomena, to manage a climate around the body where it's more comfortable when the nature is uncomfortable. So I think this is the first reason for architecture. So it's why I start to focus on that, because for me it was the main reason for doing architecture, and the design of the wall or the roof or the things around is something like a consequence of that. It's like the envelope to close the window or to keep the climate inside something, you know. And then I was interested into that since many years, and at one moment we start to do some new type of representation of that, to say, okay, maybe we will not use only black and white, like to show the solid and the void, or the wall and the space, but we could show some airflow or some temperature phenomena that happen inside the space. And then from that we could say, but maybe we could also design with that, I mean, to design the flow of air, or to design the comportment, physical comportment of the temperature. And then there is some software that arrived at this time, like we start to use that like 10 years ago, because also we have some help from software producer for doing that, and we start to use the software and to see the shape that it was creating in the air, and so it creates a new representation language, and personally I like that, because I think it's you know, like a designer, the first things you do is to draw or to produce drawing, and so I like the idea to reinvent the way the type of drawing you are producing. And also at one moment we find a funny image for the body, because very often you need on the section or on 3D perspective you need to have some human scale or like that, and so we start to have this someone with a kind of thermography vision with from more red inside the body to blue on the skin, something like that. So I personally I appreciate the possibility to challenge the graphic representation.
Great.
Great. My question follows up on your description of sort of your inspiration for designing coming from this idea of the envelope, and the body has to sort of occupy a space, and that's like this this beginning moment for the architect, design the space in which we occupy. But in a way, I feel like that's at a very architectural scale, and I was really interested in sort of the shift from in some of your earlier works. I'm really moved by the way that you talk about the body and the sort of subjective experience of climate. But then in your work in Jade Echo Park, I'm also super inspired by your reading of the landscape and this intense sort of like understanding that these phenomena are not only created, they also already exist in super complex ways on sites. And I guess, how do you reconcile those two scales when as an architect, we are maybe focused on creating the immediate climates that we live in, and as a landscape architect, we're focused on understanding the sort of landscape scale influences on climate. And as someone who's worked in both, how is that?
It was not not easy for me, you know, from because at the beginning it was quite easy to work on the interior and definition, and then I have some problem to design the exterior or the form of the building, and then it's still on my process of design now, but I start to think about, for example, I will come to the landscape, but at the architectural scale, at the building scale, I was starting to challenge the material of the building. What type of material you need to use for the envelope outside of the building. And in the history of architecture, there is first it was the material that was used for construction. So it's become the image of the building. It's made of brick, or it's made of stone, or it's made of. So you see, what you see is the material used for the building, and then. The building become like a narrative of something, and like you start to have a writing on the building. So you have some column or that evoke the Greece Academy or something like that. So it become like a narrative of something, and it's become very important during at the end of the 20th century. The building was like a media. Telling something to the people, like you know, and today I think it's could be very interesting to look at the material you use outside of the building, also from a climatic point of view, because we need to reduce the energy consumption, or we need to adjust things linked to climate. And for example, we did one project where we use. We know that the top of the building is always warmer, and the low part of the building is colder because the warm air go up inside the building. And so we say, okay, we should maybe increase the heat that is absorbed on the base of the facade and decrease on the top of the facade. So you could use different type of effusivity of type of material in order to absorb the heat or to reflect the heat. And then for the form, also linked to the flow of air, you know, because you know that if you blow on your skin, you cool your skin. This is the same effect with the wind, with the building. If you have a building exposed to the wind, it will become cold, you know, and so this type of idea arrived to the urban scale, and I rediscover like all the book of Alberti or Vitruvius, the Roman architect, that talk about how to build a city, and everything is based on wind, to be protected from the wind or to have sun. So and we completely forget that during the 20th century, because you have air conditioning inside, you have the car, you don't care about what's happened outside, like in Los Angeles, like you just pump water from somewhere, and you burn coal for energy. So we forget that, and I think it's today, because of the global warming, it's today the good moment to rethink the way to organize a city with more climatic issue inside. Yeah.
I think that makes sense. But then I guess another question is, when I sort of understand how you would organize this sort of the shape of the city in response to existing environmental conditions. Let's say when you were working in the park, for instance, I saw sort of because let's say maybe your work on sort of like where the trees were placed was a good example of this. Is like you're thinking about. Actually, sorry, hold on, I lost the thread. You could go ahead and ask your question.
Okay.
Sorry.
Kind of on the smaller scale, from what you were just talking about, it seems like you have more of an intimate relationship with what you're actually considering is going into the design. So one thing I was wondering from your lecture this morning, also back to the Eco Park and some of the installations you've done and exhibits, you're really creating these devices or machines that have a really specific effect that you're trying to control. And in one of the images you showed, you're actually 3D printing models of these devices before they became full scale. And I'm curious what your process is in actually going from this idea about a condition that you want to create to physically making it. Is it combined with engineers or maybe software to give you the correct analysis? But is there some type of back and forth design process?
Yeah, for the use of device is it was at the beginning it was linked to the trees size, like a scale of the trees, because it's because in Alphand, in the history of the landscape designer during the 19th century in Paris, he used trees like a device to create shadow, and so it's from there that come the idea to have like a tree size, a tree scale device that create a cooling effect. So we start from that, and I have to say that the design choice on the object was, came from different reasons. For example, there is some flood or rain, so you could not blow air from the ground. You need to, because if you blow from there, the water will go inside, so you have to blow like that. And then you need pipe to arrive to the object. So we calculate with the engineer the number of pipe linked to the size of air and the quantity of air we need to bring there. And then we could not have so big, because we need to divide in small pipe in order that when it's go underground, it's touch more the ground. Because if you have a big pipe, the air in the middle have no heat exchange with the ground, so you need to use more small pipe. So it's why we arrive with a lot of small pipe, and then we say, okay, we have the small pipe that arrive, and we group together. Like, okay, we say if we group with one, one is not so stable, two is still not stable, and three is static. So it's like it become with these three legs we have. And then we choose the material. The choice of the material is also, we need to have a long duration. We choose a steel, galvanized steel, because it's could stay a lot of time. And the white paint is to reflect the light in order not to heat the air inside the travel from the ground to the device. So so maybe it's a simplification of the design process, but this was a little how we took some decision about how to design this object. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's. Do we have time for one more? Great. I was sort of thinking about you describing your choice of trees as like sort of influenced by Alphonse and this idea of like form and function follows climate. And I have a teacher who always says, like, if we really want to learn about climate, we should look at plants because they can't move, you know, like it's like everything, they have to adapt, and so their adaptive capacity is so much greater. And I'm wondering, like, beyond the sort of capacity of plants to create the environments that make us comfortable, how can we sort of, have you ever sort of seen plants as an inspiration for climate adaptation?
But what I think what is interesting in what you say, me, for example, I always want that to give freedom to the people to do what they want. For example, in the park, we have some cold, if we could call that cold area, but we maintain warm area. So it means I like this idea that the people could move where they want, and maybe you want to go in the cold area, but maybe you want to go in the warm area, just because you want. So you are free to go there. So I don't say, as a designer, I don't say to you, you need to go in the cold area. So this is like this freedom of moving. Because we are not a plant, you know. This is like the cow in the mountain, or the animals, you know, that go under trees or go, you know, find different space in the landscape. You know, if you want to be protected from the rain or protect them from the wind, you could find near a stone or something. So I appreciate this way of having different climatic condition, and to offer a variety of microclimate. And it's why I use very often an idea of gradient composition. So it's not one space and another, but it's a gradation from dark to light, but with black and light, dark gray and light gray and white. You know, so it means it creates a multiplicity of condition, of climate, and because I want to, I'm no more a modern architect that say this is good and this is wrong. You know, I say maybe anything goes, like we heard, you know, this sentence, famous sentence of the postmodernist position, you know, like anything goes. So anything goes, it could be warm or cold or in between. So like a designer, I like to propose like a very rich diversity of possibility.
Great. Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much for
being
at the World Symposium. And
thank you.
your talk.